What's up, guys? Michael James with Beyond the Forbidden. Do you want to receive extra content that's not viewed anywhere else? Support Beyond the Forbidden on Patreon to receive plus content that is only exclusive to members of Beyond the Forbidden. Content like the full 2 hour podcast, bonus shows, full length video interviews, behind the scenes footage with guests, and much more. So, what do you have to lose? Go to patreon.com/, Beyond the Forbidden. That's patreon.com/, Beyond the Forbidden, and become a member of Beyond the Forbidden for just $5 a month. And also check the description for the links.
Coming to you from an undisclosed location, somewhere in the northern hemisphere, waiting out the alien apocalypse. He is armed with a machete and a microphone. Join Michael James as he seeks answers to the paranormal, conspiracies, ancient mysteries, and the occult. Are you ready to trip the fuck out? This is Beyond the Forbidden.
All right, welcome to Beyond the Forbidden. Today on the show, I got a man I've been trying to get on the show for a while, back and forth since spring of last year, Mr. Ryan Gable. You may know the name. If you're a fan of Clyde Lewis and Ground Zero, that's where you hear him. He also has his own podcast, Secret Teachings. But Ryan Gable, welcome to the show. How you doing, man?
Hey, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So let's go ahead and throw everything out for everybody that's listening right now. Your website, your podcast, books, and everything. And we'll just go ahead and put that on the table right now.
That's actually what I do when I have a guest on my show. I usually let them talk about their work and whatnot first before we go into the details. So thank you for that. My website has been pretty basic and pretty antiquated for a very long time. If you go to www.thesecretteachings.info, it's pretty easy to navigate, even for people that aren't computer savvy. It is in the process of being redone and maybe made a little more shiny and new, but it is still going to be easy to navigate. So if you go over there, you'll find my archive for my show. It is free. You'll also find all of my montages and my digital and physical books. And you can either access that if you're a subscriber, or a lot of stuff, as I said, is free. So all that on our website at secretteachings.info. I don't really use social media. I don't really use any of the alternative video or streaming platforms. So again, I'm very antiquated and very old school. And I even use an old email. If anybody wants to email me this evening, my email is a Yahoo email. It's rdgable@yahoo.com. And other than that, my 4 books on the website, I think that you'd really enjoy, your whole audience probably would enjoy. The book that I'm most proud of, and that is Occult Arcana. It's over 600 pages. 11 is the font size. And it is a compilation, an encyclopedia, if you will, not trying to push a certain narrative of the occult, but it takes you through everything from basic standard Western and Eastern philosophy to symbolism to what magic is, defined in a lot of different ways, all the way through demonology to voodoo to Shintoism, you name it, it's probably in that book, Occult Arcana. And I think that that's really the core of what we'll probably be discussing this evening.
Sorry, I was muted. I got the baby in the background. Yes, this.
Okay.
Yep, she's a little over three months. Like I've said before, me and my wife have. They just came in the house. Me and my wife started late. We did in vitro. She's about to be 39. I'm about to be 37. The Skull and Bones date 3/22, and people call me Shield. That I'm on the inside. I'm CIA, Shield. But man, it's been a crazy journey. Just like I told you, Ryan, right before the show, we were talking about kind of our path and our journey and everything. With me, it started back in 06, just like I told you. And a lot of people that's listening to this already know that. But But yeah, man, this shows, it's just like Clyde Lewis, Ground Zero. I do the paranormal, the occult, conspiracies, ancient mysteries. I believe it all fits into one big puzzle, and that's what I like about Ground Zero. That's what I like about your work. And other shows that I follow also is that you don't need to be stagnated on just one particular subject, one particular genre. You need to look at the broader picture, the 100,000 foot view of everything, and then connect the dots. You agree?
Yeah, I agree conceptually for sure. I feel that, I think you'd probably agree with me in turn if I was to say that it depends obviously on the individual. Some people find more interest in one particular thing or another.
Yeah.
But conceptually, certainly, when you combine everything together, when you look at it from that height, I always give the example of, let's just simplify it to something as simple as food. A lot of people don't think that food is an important thing in regard to the mystical or to the occult or to anything of that nature. But in fact, when you read a lot of esoteric books or occult books, or for that matter, even if you look at contemporary psychics, a lot of psychics are totally charlatans and frauds, but there certainly are some real psychics, I believe. I think I've spoken to a handful of them in my radio career. And psychics will tell you, a real psychic, I feel, will tell you that if you don't have the proper form of lifestyle that includes food and releasing the anxieties and the stresses of everyday life, even something like clean water, making sure that what you put into your body as a temple is pure, even if that is saying a prayer over it or receiving it humbly, then it allows you to have better access to the spirit world. This is why in every mystical tradition and in most religions, even on the surface of most religions, there is an emphasis on purity, on purifying, of the washing of the hands, of the baptism, etc. So food, water, etc., these are very important things. They wouldn't be seen as occult by the average person. That's what kind of makes the aspect of food and water occult in and of itself, because it is hidden. Most people don't think that these are esoteric or occult things, but it means essentially everything is occult in that sense. There's always another layer below that symbol, below the interpretation of meaning, below the practice of something as simple as putting your hands together to pray, or even cultural things we do like shaking somebody's hand. Obviously there's a long traditional history of why we do that, to show the other person that we don't have a weapon, that we're not dangerous. All of these things could be considered esoteric and occult.
Or hiding the hand.
With something like food, or hiding the hand. Yeah.
Yep.
And something as simple as food, when you take care of yourself, I mean, the idea of the body being a temple is not just a Christian concept. When you take care of yourself, and that doesn't mean that if you eat something that you consider to be junk or bad, that you're going to go to hell. It's not like that. But taking care of yourself allows you to have more direct contact with your quote unquote higher self or the spirit self, whatever you want to call it. And so something as simple as food can be seen in a very complex esoteric and occult sense. And when you realize that, then you recognize that the entirety of everything we see in existence has a mirrored version of itself in the other dimensions or worlds or whatever you choose to call them. What we would probably call more generally the as above, so below concept, the Hermetic concept. That which is above is like that which is below, and that which is here, visible, is like that which is there, invisible, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that's what I love about your research, man. You break things down really good. And I love whenever I love whenever you come on, Ground Zero, and also I check out, your podcast, also your radio show. I believe you go live right after. Do you go live right after Ground Zero? Because I know I've listened to your podcast on Spotify. I believe Spotify and a few other places, but I'm not sure about the live. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, I guess it depends on how you define live. I've done live radio most of my career. Now it is recorded just a few hours before the show goes up, but it does air right after Clyde, Monday through Friday. Yes.
Okay, but so, man, my head is spinning. I don't even know what direction to go, because I feel like a fat kid in a candy store right now. But so
Take
I
your
guess,
time. No, we've got like 2 hours. It's
yeah,
okay.
man, a little less, but yeah. All right. So I'm into occult symbolism, predictive programming,
Okay.
gematria, and numerology. Of course, I'm not as vast as you. It's not as vast as you. You've been breaking that stuff, decoding that crap, that stuff down for a while, for a long time. I sometimes I need to buckle down and kind of research more in depth. I kind of get the Cliff Notes version of everything. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, and move on to the next thing. But sometimes I may go a couple days or a week, and deeply dive into something. But so um many researchers, or let me see, I guess the thing I don't understand, Ryan, that I just don't understand, and why and how does all of this, I guess the predictive programming, the gematria, the numerology, the occult symbolism, how does that fit into the big picture when it comes to conspiracies and the elites using those tools at their disposal? Um, and how and why are the conspirators using it to their advantage to carry out certain agendas and atrocities?
Well, I would say first and foremost, and I'll try not to rant tonight on your show, but I think first
I'm
and
here all the
foremost,
time, Ryan.
the idea.
I'm here all the time, man. This show's about you, dude.
All right, sounds good. So I'll still, for your audience, I'll try not to be too long-winded. I'm working on that. That's something I'm trying to deal with my own character. But
I
I
got you.
think that the idea of a conspiracy, if you've listened to my show, which you have, I like to objectively try to define what words mean before I go into an analysis of a question. So a conspiracy is obviously, if you look in a dictionary, people conspiring to do something. It has a negative connotation. It's not always negative. You and I could conspire to get a really famous name on your show to do an interview. That's a conspiracy. Your listeners might not know that you're getting this XYZ person on the show. That's a conspiracy. Obviously, other things are conspiracies. Iran-Contra was a conspiracy. The war in Iraq was a planned conspiracy. And of course, there's a difference between those types of conspiracies, positive and negative, and then, of course, conspiracy theories, which are just theories, and sometimes they turn out to be true, like the assassination of John F. Kennedy, for example. So for your audience, first and foremost, it's really important, in my view, to objectively try to define what things mean and to find balance in those types of what some people would call buzzwords or hot topic words like conspiracy. Because as you know, if you turn on the news, they throw this word around on CNN, Fox News, and every alternative radio show. Every episode, every day, it's nonstop. It's all you hear. Everything's a conspiracy. And now, politically speaking, even the right and left just constantly accuse each other of being involved in conspiracies or whatever the case might be. So that's first and foremost. In terms of a group of people or individuals or organizations conspiring, this happens all the time, positive and negative conspiracies. If people like iPhones or they like the new phone from Microsoft or whatever the new technology is, companies like Apple, they don't usually tell the public or other companies or even a lot of people working in their company what they're working on. So the new phone, the new computer, whatever, is usually a conspiracy that is closely guarded within the company. It's just a secret. So understanding all that, that might be mundane to the average person. And I consider myself very average. It's mundane to me, but it's important before we can go to the next step. To answer your question, I feel as if, and this is a personal opinion that I think I can back up with some sort of observational, call them quote unquote facts. I'll call them observations. And that is, when you look at the world of social media and the world of mainstream media, that world is a lot different than the world that we experience outside of the internet. If people are old enough to remember what it was like before the internet, you know that there's really two worlds that we live in now. We live in the real world, and then we live in this digital environment, which is kind of a replica, almost like the matrix of the real world. So a lot of things that are considered, just like UFOs, a lot of things that are considered conspiracies can be easily identifiable. They're not conspiracies. They can be defined in a different way. But the real core of that idea of conspiracies and working together with others or manipulating the public, etc. This is public policy for corporations. This is public policy for the most part for most politicians. This is public policy for big banks. This is public policy, especially for large organizations or groups that do things that otherwise, if they don't try to cultivate a positive spin on what they're doing, like the Great Reset, it would be considered pretty sinister because nobody really wants to lose their sovereignty or their ability to transact or their ability to interact or go out and have a bite to eat, unless nobody wants to accept that as part of a method of coercion. In order to live your life, you have to do X, Y, Z, whatever Klaus Schwab tells you to do. You have to eat bugs in order to save the world, or you have to get a vaccine or do this or that in order to go out in public. They have to spin that in a positive way. All of that is conspiracy. Now, I know that when you ask that question, for a lot of people, what they're interpreting, because I'm one of those people as well, I'm also interpreting more sinister, dark conspiracies, the kind of thing that we call the New World Order, or the kind of thing that we call, we think, secret societies and the Illuminati and stuff like that. So there's multiple levels to this. And in a simplified way, and I'll pass the mic, if you will, back to you. In a simplified way, I think what we're dealing with here is, for the most part, things that are business as usual, that have nothing to do with long-standing, long-planned evil conspiracies. It's just business as usual for the way that, quote-unquote, the world works. But certainly there are some conspiracies that are developed on a perhaps weekly, monthly, yearly basis. The war in Ukraine is largely a conspiracy because we don't know even where most of the money is going. And for that matter, if you listen to my shows, I do the Super Bowl analysis every year. The people, they get together to make the commercials and to develop the halftime show, that's all part of a conspiracy. Whether or not it's part of some absolute conspiracy or it's part of a series of just everyday workings of how the world works is really up for the listener to discern. But these are all things that can be considered under the label of conspiracy. And I hope that I've sort of played around with and answered your question adequately.
Yes, you did. Maybe I missed it. Like with symbolism, predictive programming, gematria, numerology, how do the elites, the ones that have all this sacred knowledge behind the scenes, because we know that many of the people that run this world, behind in the shadows, we know that they use astrologists, they use numerologists, and a lot of them probably practice these things, the symbolism, predictive programming through whatever means, whatever means at their disposal. Numerology, of course, astrology. I guess, how does that work? Is it more of that it's a sense of self-empowerment by these elites that they think that if they get a certain astrology, whatever it is, whatever kind of reading for the future, or they show these symbols, or they show this type of predictive programming in film or whatever. Does it give them is it a self-empowerment, like an ego boost, or do they really have the esoteric, I guess the esoteric ancient mystery school, alchemical structure, whatever it is, of the universe? You know what I mean? Like, do they actually have the keys and they use it to keep us in bondage, to keep us enslaved here on Earth, keep us in a prison planet, and to keep their agendas pushing forward? Or is it more of something nonchalant and it just gives them a simple ego boost?
I'm glad that you reclarified that other part of the question. So I don't necessarily think it's an absolute thing. As I said, I don't think it's an absolute conspiracy, but to speak specifically directly to the idea of the usage of symbols and the usage of, let's say, certain rituals and ceremonies and things like that, I feel, again, this is my opinion based on how I've spent my time reading and learning over the last decade and a half into the occult and other esoteric subjects. I think that is a very convoluted subject, and I think it's something that needs to be hashed out with more than yes or no or absolute answers. I want your listeners to understand that it's a very, very simple thing to understand, but it's very, very complex in scope. I think that I'm going to keep saying I think because I don't know, and anybody who tells you they know for sure is lying to you or lying to themselves or lying to you and themselves.
Run away from them.
Yeah, in my view, I would run away from those kinds of people. But I think it's a really great example when you analyze the Super Bowl halftime show. Not that it's the Illuminati, not that it's some kind of ritual to destroy civilization or whatever. I don't know what people believe in, but when I see the Super Bowl halftime show, I see an opportunity to sell products. Companies take advantage of that. Companies take advantage of the power of symbols that speak largely to our subconscious just in their corporate logos. And it's also an opportunity because hundreds of millions tune in visually, millions more tune in through the radio. Even if you can't see the commercials, you still hear radio commercials, you still hear the game, there's still propaganda, there's still corporate or governmental ideas that are being sold to you, whether it's the product or it's just a concept, an idea, something that's politically correct, whatever the case might be. It is a giant bowl or cauldron that all this energy gets dumped into, and it's used to sell you products and ideas, again, whether those are corporations or governments. So using that just as a base or as an example, it doesn't have to be that the Super Bowl halftime show is evil or the Illuminati or this is planned 10 years in advance. It's planned probably 6 to 7 months in advance, but it's all about selling you a product. It's all about selling you an idea. There's a difference between that and certain groups of individuals, let's call them secret societies, planning to do something to human civilization or to consolidate power, let's say. Governments trying to consolidate power into fewer and fewer hands to get more control of business, or businesses trying to consolidate power to get more control of government, whichever way you choose to cut it, whichever way you choose to slice it, there's a difference. So when governments and corporations, let's say, work together, that I think is the essence, not only of Mussolini's definition of fascism, when the state runs the corporations, or you could say when the corporations run the state, but either way, the idea is working together with corporations and government. That includes media, that includes pharmaceutical companies, that includes all the things that your listeners are probably interested in, all the things I'm interested in. What that does is that creates the idea that there's this overarching conspiracy to screw you as a human, to screw you out of your birthright, to screw you out of your wealth and your happiness, etc. And for the most part, from most companies, from most government officials, that is absolutely true. They are focused on power. They are focused on what they can obtain with that power, and it is largely an ego-based system, not a capitalist system. It's largely an ego, what I call an ego-based system. It's not a political thing. It's a spiritual thing, because there are plenty of good companies and there are plenty of good political officials, not just in the United States, but in other countries as well, who do the right thing. So power is not corrupting necessarily, and absolute power is not absolutely corrupting. It's certain forms of power that lure the people that are corrupted, but it also lures people that are good. So within this corporate, government, banking, media, pharmaceutical, etc., military, etc., industrial complex, you have the essence of that idea of conspiracy. Whether or not everything's planned, I don't think so, but some things certainly are planned. And when those things are planned, you better believe and you better bet your bottom dollar, as people say, that the people that are engaging in those conspiracies, whether that's to sell you a product like a sandwich, or whether that's to sell you an idea like giving up your sovereignty as an individual to help the collective, whatever the case might be, they're using symbols and they're using things that communicate to the subconscious, because it's a lot easier. The process or to get you to process information subconsciously and even unconsciously through subliminals than it is to get you to process it consciously. So that's why everything that we see in the media, even the alternative media, it's all based on emotion. It's all based on ideas and symbols. It's not based on logical, critical thinking. And when you study philosophy and esoteric and occultism, traditionally, whether it's religions that are institutional or just general philosophies on life, the idea is the difference between God and good and evil and the devil is the difference between whether something is done logically or something is done emotionally. When we are driven to do things emotionally and not logically, you can define these words however you choose, but when we are driven to do something emotionally instead of logically, that is in essence animalistic, that is in essence evil, because it takes us away from using our conscious minds to make logical decisions, which are things that throughout history we've called God. Logic is God, reasoning is God, emotional reactions are the devil or evil. I choose to break it down this way. I think it's easy to understand. So when you engage people emotionally like this and intend to do it emotionally, that is an evil conspiracy, and that is the use of symbols and the conscious and subconscious understanding psychology, basically, to manipulate people. On the opposite side of that, you have people trying to teach others and trying to themselves become better people by refining their character and by finding a way to limit emotional responses, to find a balance between emotion in your experiences and logic and reasoning and how you deal with life. That is the goal. That is the purpose of the mystery schools. That is the purpose of the secret teachings of all ages, if you will. That is the purpose of really the foundational core of positively minded or progressively, and I mean that not politically, but progressively, like trying to build civilization progressively minded organizations like the Freemasons, who certainly are corrupted, who certainly are not all good people, but that's the whole point of Freemasonry, to build a better world, a better person, and a better society. That's symbolized by individual actions, which are bricks in the individual temple or pyramid, and then you as an individual with a refined character become a brick in the societal pyramid or the societal temple, which is ever unfinished. So this is the idea between logic and reasoning and God, and emotion and hysterical reactions, which is really evil and the devil. And the people that are truly in power, I call them the high priests, whether they're in Central and South America or in Egypt in the old days, or they're in big corporations, universities, banks, government, etc. today, they use their knowledge that the common person doesn't have on average to manipulate the common person. And that, back to what I was saying a couple of minutes ago about conspiracies, that is part of the course. That is sort of the functioning of the world. So we have to overcome that by becoming more knowledgeable and adhering not to emotion, but to reason and logic when we interact with new ideas or with news, et cetera, whatever the case might be. Hope that makes sense.
It does. And you always, if you've been listening to Ryan on his show or on Ground Zero, because he's a frequent guest on Ground Zero, you'll understand how well he lays things down. You just gotta, if you've been, some things he talks about gets a little deep, but if you just patient with him, he will break it down really well. So earlier, I didn't want to interrupt you. You were talking about health, like the beginning of the show, something about health. Me, a lot of my listeners know, I've mentioned a few times, I fast. I do 24-hour fast. I only eat one time a day. And man, usually even with I've been doing it on and off for years. Like I started out maybe 5-6 years ago doing like a intermittent fasting, 18 hours a day, or I think I started out 16 doing that. Then I got down to where maybe a couple years ago on and off until last year doing 24-hour fast. But since January of 2022, I may have broke my 24-hour fast. Maybe, I don't know. I'm just speculating, maybe 10 to 20 times, maybe since January of last year. And I have a lot, I have mental clarity. Like I feel good, even with like right now, like I'm tired, but I still feel good, like mentally. You know, we have a 3-month-old infant, you know, like lack of sleep. I actually work a job. I don't do this full time yet. You know what I mean? Which I would like to do that eventually. But also, and I meant to tell you that a while ago, but you was talking about like the Super Bowl. And so the Super Bowl, you had Rihanna. You had at the Grammys, you had Sam Smith. So to me, and just like I hate just kind of like you, I hate the CIA created terms conspiracy. You know what I mean? But I think it's something much deeper going on behind the scenes or on a subconscious level, maybe some type of alchemical something. You're much better at breaking this stuff down than I am. I have when it comes to the occult, and one of my listeners said, you don't interview a whole lot of people about the occult. I said, I know. I'm very ignorant when it comes to people like you, Ryan Gable. But to me, I feel like they are casting a spell. You know what I mean? I've been looking at this stuff on and off for years since '06, but I feel like when I see stuff like that, I feel like it's casting a spell. Why? Can I prove it? No, I can't prove it. So, but why? That's the $1 million question. Why are they doing this? Is it because it's like some type of tulpa that they're creating in our subconscious, or some type of um I don't know, some type of parasite, vampiric parasite that's attacking us? You know what I mean? Like, what are they throwing out there?
Oh, I know. I think I know what you mean. Yeah, I think I know what you mean. Go ahead.
But that's basically it. Why are they doing that? Like I don't understand. I know we're speculating, but when it comes to people like you speculating on the occult, your word is a lot more. Your speculation is a lot better than a lot of people's that research this that are out there in the alternative community.
Well, first of all, I appreciate that. I do want to say that the inability of myself sometimes, I try to critique myself as often as possible. The inability of myself sometimes to reduce things to simple language might be seen, and I certainly see it myself, as a sign of ignorance, because I'm unable to simplify something complex or even something simple. But that's also just my personality.
You just been reading you just been reading too much Manly P. Hall.
Perhaps he has a very large book.
You decoded him.
The reason, because you bring this up, and I'm glad you did, because I want to critique myself for a second before I answer that question. That is, I don't have all the answers. I don't like when people say you're going to find the truth on this radio show, nothing's just tongue in cheek. I like to try to be objective about what I look at, what I read, what I engage with, because I don't have all the answers. I really don't know if what I'm saying is accurate in terms of unseen spiritual things. A lot of stuff is based on experience. But when you start to look at what other people experience in their lives and you bring the two together, you start to recognize that there are some parallels. So for me, I choose to explain things in great detail. I've always been interested in legalese and like natural law and how words work, kind of like Jordan Maxwell, who unfortunately passed away recently. So that's where I'm coming from. Yes, certainly I'm a little bit ignorant because I don't necessarily have the ability to reduce a giant text into a few words, but it's also my personality. I like to take a long time to explain something, because attention span or not, I feel it's necessary to get all the details on the table to get a good analysis of what's actually happening. So with that being said, why do people do those things? I mean, I would ask the same question about why do Christians or Muslims or Jews or Buddhists, et cetera, do the things they do? And for most of them, it's because they're trying to, like, I grew up a Christian, so I can speak from the standpoint of having been a Christian. Christians tend to follow in the footsteps of Christ, even if they don't actually do that. That's what they say they're doing, depending on the denomination. And they say they're doing that because they want to go to heaven, or they want to live life to the fullest and be a good person. They want to be saved from sin, etc. And that same concept, although it might be seen a little bit differently, It's a very similar thing you would find in, for example, Shintoism, the indigenous religion of ancient and also modern Japan. Although Shintoism doesn't have a founder, a doctrine, a heaven, a hell, it's based on the belief in kami, which are spirits. They come in a variety of forms, kind of like a form of animism. They accept all religions and all philosophies. It's really up to you as an individual to figure out what your spiritual advancement is. There's no guilt or anything like that. So in Shintoism, you still have the same idea that Christians would talk about with salvation and following the footsteps of Christ, except Shintoism is basically the way, like Jesus is the way, the truth, and the light and the life. Shintoism is the way of the kami, the way of doing things that are in accord with nature. So when you do things in accordance with nature, you are connecting yourself to the divine. You are making and forging a connection that is spiritual to the divine. You are recognizing you are part of that, made in the image of God, if you will, as Christians in particular say. And there's a sort of spiritual development that requires dedication. It requires purification, and this can be interpreted in a lot of ways, but it requires dedication, purification, will, intention, gratitude for nature, all these things that we associate with morals or ethics. Like I said, God is reason, God is logic, God is harmony, the Pythagorean idea of God being harmony in music, which is vibration, which is the word of God. So that's the light, that's the positive. And I use Christianity and Shintoism because they're completely different, but at the same time, they're coming from the same place in terms of spiritual development, from what I can see from the outside looking in. Now, on the other side of that, to answer your question, you have people that certainly do things because they don't have any belief in divinity. And when you don't have belief in divinity, that doesn't have to be God. It doesn't have to be animism, spirits all over the place. It's just the idea, to me, that there is something physically animating this body. Just like the microphone that you're using or the microphone that I'm using. Something is animating, whether it's a condenser microphone or whatever it is, something is animating the microphone. It's going through the wire to the board, to the internet, wherever it might be. And then people are hearing those vibrations. We're creating things using words, etc. So when you have a person who doesn't want to connect and doesn't want to be a part of or to be responsible for their actions, so doesn't want to be a part of the, let's call it the natural world, those are people that tend to do things that are very selfish. They don't generally have any concern for their own well-being. And if you don't have concern for your own well-being, you certainly aren't going to have concern, for the most part, for other people's well-being. These are the people that we would call within our society, Christians might call them evil. Buddhists might call them misguided. It's not a group of people. It's just the behavior of not being responsible, not caring how you appear, not caring how other people suffer or benefit from your actions. It's just this idea. The people that don't have a sense of divinity are the people that don't have any guidance, and therefore they will do anything and everything to please themselves in this material world because, like the popular saying goes, you only live once, YOLO, or fear of missing out, FOMO. These ideas are really popular with kids because it's kind of this atheistic idea that there is nothing. So if there is nothing beyond, then just consume and destroy everything in the present because you never get another opportunity, which I've turned around and I've said on my show many times, if you only live once, which I don't know how anybody could know for sure you only live once, but if you only live once, you can take that idea, which is a very atheistic concept. If you take the idea of you only live once, so you're going to do everything you can to destroy your one opportunity to experience everything that the world has to offer, it's kind of arrogant and it's really ignorant to just destroy the vessel or to destroy the experience by focusing on really, really specific things and just living a life full of pleasure with no balance. That would be considered by many to be evil or ignorant, arrogant, etc. So point is, to answer your question, there are people, Christians, Shintoists, that see gratitude and service to others, even service to self, in the sense of making sure that you're clean and making sure that you're happy and you're doing things that really feed the soul. that is moving toward divinity. But that's a really difficult road. On the Pythagorean Y, the road to nirvana is harsh, it is difficult, it is rough, it is filled with sharp and dangerous objects and creatures, symbolically speaking. But the other path, the one that takes you on a very, very easy journey, ultimately at the end, there is suffering and pain, conceptually, symbolically. So again, to answer your question, people do things to connect with God. Others don't believe in God or don't believe in the essence of spirit. So they have no guidance, they have no guideposts, and therefore they will fall into any sort of worldly thing, whether that's possession or greed or the 7 deadly sins in general. I hope that answers your question. I think that's the best way that I can describe it. That's why evil people do what they do.
And you're talking a little bit about symbolism and also you was raised I guess as a Christian. I live in the Bible Belt.
You were?
Oh yeah. I was raised Southern Pentecostal, fire and brimstone. And so kind of connecting the dots here. I mentioned this a couple times before on this show. So when I was first off, my church, just a case of, because I get newcomers all the time. I was raised in a church as an infant, like a couple weeks old. The preacher holds me up in front of the church, and he's in front of the pew, and they all start speaking in tongues. That's what everybody says when I got older growing up, that I forgot what they call that. I guess giving me to the Lord or whatever. But there was a term that they called it. It's not ringing a bell what that term is, but I'm talking about a church where women couldn't even they had to wear long dresses. They had to have their hair couldn't be touching their shoulders. It had to be long hair. They couldn't wear makeup, jewelry. Men couldn't wear shorts. It was, and everything is a sin, everything. But anyways, long story short, and also I've seen 300-pound guy do a front flip over a pew speaking in tongues. A front flip, land on his feet. You know what I mean? Maybe we'll get to that here in a minute, maybe. So I asked the preacher one day, what's all that? What's that oil that you rub on everybody's forehead, or I think it was the forehead or ear. And he told me, he didn't want to tell me. He said, don't tell nobody, but it's from crocodiles. And that always stuck with me. I was a young teenager.
Oh, really?
Yes. Now, okay. Do I have proof, or is he just joking with me? He said, don't tell nobody because they may think it's gross or something like that. And so I never thought about it. I just thought it's kind of weird, but I was thinking, yeah, okay. We live in Louisiana. You know what I mean? We live in Louisiana. There's crocodiles in our backyard. You know what I mean? Alligators.
I'm from the South too.
Where in the South?
I know. I'm from Florida, so
okay.
I've gotten experience.
So I didn't think of anything of that, right? So the older I got, 06, I came back from the military and AIT from training, and 06 was my awakening. Listen to that's when my mind exploded, right? And so from there, I don't know when it was, maybe 2000, between 06 and probably 2012 ish. Just doing the research, I came across that the crocodile was very sacred, But anyways, I came across an article because I couldn't find what I read about the crocodiles back then, but this is the only closest thing that I could find. This is off the Medium from 2019, the medium.com. Mm-hmm. The word Christ, here we go. Quote, Christ comes from Christos, meaning anointed one. In the Greek, Christos was used to translate the Hebrew Messiah, meaning anointed one, a title allegedly adopted from the tradition of anointing the Egyptian pharaoh during coronation with oil drawn from the fat of the Mesa, which which is the sacred crocodile. In coffins of Egyptian mummies, the word KRST, I guess Christ in Egyptian maybe, is found as a blessing and anointing from Horus and Osiris. Hence, the word Christos is thought as loaned. Christ denoted the process of preparation of the mummy. I guess Christ is KRST, how they have it labeled. Maybe that's Christ in Egyptian. I'm not sure. Of the mummy by embalming, purifying, and anointing, and can mean anointed, buried, or covered in oil. How weird is that? You talking about symbolism? Like, how weird is that, Ron? Decode that for me.
Yeah, that's actually you already decoded that. I have a section in my book Occult Arcana where I talk a little bit about that, and you're 100% right.
What's up, guys? Michael James with Beyond the Forbidden. Do you want to receive extra content that's not viewed anywhere else? Support Beyond the Forbidden on Patreon to receive plus content that is only exclusive to members of Beyond the Forbidden. Content like the full 2-hour podcast, bonus shows, full-length video interviews, behind-the-scenes footage with guests, and much more. So what do you have to lose? Go to patreon.com/Beyond the Forbidden. That's patreon.com/Beyond the Forbidden and become a member of Beyond the Forbidden for just $5 a month. And also check the description for the links.